type of inference is being made. Like when you're saying that you're changing, like you're keeping all
The
the other
sound type.
constants fixed, and you're changing one constant, you're making this like very specific claim about what happens when you fix certain constants and change
Well, it's an
one.
abductive inference.
Oh,
That's explanation.
I'm okay. That's not the specific
Why
like.
did
thing.
he just caught me so off guard. I didn't even know he was in here.
Like that's not the specific thing that
I've
I'm
been here.
being puzzled about. I'm being puzzled about like why the domain of discourse is focused on what happens when you fix like the constants. Like why are we only observing the possibility space and fixing the other constants and then changing one? Like why is that the right probability to think about? Like
What is this
inference
guy
would be
talking
there?
about?
Sorry, go on.
What are you talking about?
Okay, you know how fine tuning works is that like if you change one constant while keeping the other constant fixed, then everything sort of breaks down. I'm asking like, what is the type of inference? Why are we looking at the data point in which we're fixing all the other constants and changing one? Like, why is that the right sort of thing to look at? Why aren't we looking at like, okay, what if we change all the constants? Why aren't we like widening the probability space in this way?
Like, why is that the best way to find out if the constants need to be the way they are? Like, why does it have to be by tweaking them one at a time?
Yeah, that's.
I'm gonna stay in here, but I'll be
Where's
back
the
in like
port?
5 minutes. Yeah, this isn't Fortnite anymore.
Shit.
It turned into not Fortnite.
Yeah, I'm not so
Yeah.
sure if anyone who runs the fine tuning argument has any sort of motivation as to like why we should look at this, or any sort of strong, you know, consideration as to like why we should look at it this way.
Yeah, if you're still here in 5 minutes, I'm gonna ask you more about what you mean.
Can you tell me a little bit more about what you mean? I'm just kidding.
I'm not really understanding what's the thing you're talking about.
He's
Or your
saying
issue
like,
with fine-tuning.
Don, you said you want to talk about fatalism stuff?
That
Well, I mean, I thought what I was talking about was quite clear that
Yeah.
fine tuning has to look at data that observes what happens when you modify all the constants like simultaneously and those sort of combinations. It can't just be focused on fixing, you know, a bunch of the constants and then changing one. That's not how you should ever view the probability space.
Well, even like before fine tuning was brought up, we were talking about other objections to theism, mainly Christianity, and like I think they're all. And the Kaysen said he thought they were all bad. I don't think any of them are like super bad, because like the most successful like Christian apologists, in my opinion, all do this move where they never talk about Christianity and they just like say, we need to convince you that theism is probable and then we can work on Christianity. But like, I don't know. It just seems like you're lightening the workload on yourself.
that's not true. Dark Dawkins doesn't do that.
Okay, shut up. Christianity is just so highly implausible that I think you might have to have a brain tumor or something to accept it.
You know, I'm actually a non-cognitivist about Christianity, along with like a lot of religions.
You don't think? Wait, you think they're just non-propositional?
Yeah, I'm not sure what they're even saying and whether they're saying anything meaningful.
I think they're saying meaningful things. I just think they're contradictory. I mean,
Well, they want to say that a God created the universe, and it's just true by my lights. What I mean by causation is just like a relationship between physical entities. So when you like introduce this metaphysical tool and where there's like some supernatural entity explaining, right? And it's just a unique concept of causation, and I've never gotten like a concept of that. Same for like what it means to exist. Like I'm broadly like a
Like to take up space.
metaphysical displationist.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
So,
there's the first point is about I don't think something has to be metaphysically possible for you to understand the concept. And I mean, when you are saying, okay, like what exactly do you
well, I
want to
don't
get
even know
clear
what that
on when
means. Metaphysical. I just
we're
don't know
talking?
what what it means for something to cause under their semantics.
The way that they say God caused the universe.
Okay, just take the sort of counterfactual account of causation. Would you understand it then?
Yeah.
Where
X it
Yeah,
causes Y if and only
but
if.
then you just
If
have
X didn't obtain, Y
that.
wouldn't obtain.
yeah.
Yeah, but then you just have reason to think the universe is not caused. And then those types of counterfactual concepts of causation just makes it impractical talking about causal stuff because it's unclear how you tie the knot because typically you want to like opt for like a causal mechanism in showing how the two relata are like causally wedded, right? But even if you take a counterfactual view, it just doesn't seem clear how you even establish the two entities are causally tied or what it would
Well,
mean.
I mean, it. Well, I don't know why that wouldn't make sense. You say, okay, like in a world where God exists, then the universe does exist. In a world where God wouldn't exist, the universe doesn't exist. There's the
But
causal
why?
relation.
Yeah,
But
but
why would I think that there's an explanation there
Wait,
that
what do you
God's
mean?
explaining that?
yeah, especially if God's necessary.
It might be a brute fact that in every world in which God exists, the universe does, and in every world he doesn't, the universe doesn't. Right. To say that they're like explained in this way, um, it just doesn't seem clear what that would
I
mean.
explain. You mean?
Well, the whatever is the causal, their concept of causally explaining.
Oh, so but their concept of causal explaining would just be okay. If this thing didn't exist, then that thing wouldn't exist.
Yeah, but Monkey
That'd
Boy
be
just
what it
accounted
is.
for that. Where it might just be brute that in worlds where God doesn't exist, it just so happens to also be brute that the universe does not exist. And that is a case where X doesn't obtain and Y doesn't obtain, but it's not causal. Unless you're just saying it's defined as that.
Look, it would be causal in this sense. I think you're talking about a different concept of causation that requires maybe someone to use their powers in a certain way for
No, because the traditional concept, like what I'm talking about, is something that undermines two different concepts that are unfriendly towards each other. Where one wants to say that
because it seems though
one,
like the concept of explaining is going to be more than a causal relationship here.
I just take it causal explanations are just a variant of explanation.
Oh, but then I don't think someone who holds this view would accept that. Like maybe an explanation would appeal to someone's powers, say, like, okay,
What is a power supposed to mean there?
I'll just give the concept by like extension. I have the power to leave my room. I have the power to stop this call. I have the power to go to my computer and type. Um,
Like
trees
like
have the
ability.
power to grow.
Like something that you
You
have
mean,
the ability to.
Ability
yeah,
and
something
power.
like if you had deliberated on acting to do something that you have good reason to think you would achieve that aim.
Hmm?
Like, like suppose when I say, was that not clear?
Wait, what? I don't know what you said.
I said that you're saying something like by ability or power that you're just saying that if you had acted to do X, right, that you would succeed, or at least you're justified in thinking you would succeed.
I don't. I don't know if I'm giving any sort of reductive account. I'm just giving examples.
Yeah, but I'm asking, I'm not entirely clear what those examples like what concept they're targeting there. That's why I'm offering an interpretation so I'm
Yeah,
clear exactly.
I don't think I want to give you a definition like that, so I'm not gonna do that.
I mean, I'm not really clear what it would mean for one to have an ability there.
I mean, people deal with these examples all the time, and
Because look, like the interpretation I offer it, I can make sense of where when I say I have the ability to lift 20 pounds, right? I'm just saying that if I aimed to lift 20 pounds now, suppose I was in a world with 20-pound dumbbell next to me, that I would have good reasons to think I would succeed in lifting it off the ground, right? And that might be from like prior events where I've lifted either more or other objects that were weighted, such that,
okay, I
you
don't
know,
care. Just for the purpose of discussion, you can define it that way. What do you want?
then in that case, if you're saying, so what does the ability stuff have to do? You're just saying that what it means to be a causal explanation is that it has the
Nope.
ability to bring it about.
No. Uh, there's a difference between explaining and a causal explanation here. Like when you're saying, okay, he explains the universe, then you can appeal to causal relations, and you can also appeal to powers, and you might think that both of them are needed to give a full explanation as to why that thing is there. So simply saying, okay, there's in all the world where God exists, the universe also exists. Well, there has to be some talk about powers there. If this
But
is your
don't you
core,
think those people using that talk that they would make a distinction between a world in which whenever God's there, the universe is there, and that's just birth?
if that's just brute, then there's no talk about the powers between the creator and the universe.
Yeah, then at that point, then I would want to get clear what it would mean to have the power to bring the universe to being.
I already accepted your account of powers, so you know what it means.
Okay, so it's just saying that God has reason to believe that if he acted in bringing it about, that
Well, that
he
doesn't.
would.
But that doesn't explain.
Where I have reason to think that.
No, so
You set up this account earlier where in every world where God exists, the universe exists, and whenever every world God doesn't exist, the universe does not exist. But if all you mean by power is that if he attempted to, he has good reason to think he would succeed, then you could have worlds where God existed and a universe didn't exist. But God knows that if he were to try, he would most likely succeed in making a universe.
wait, you are you saying that there would be worlds where God existed and he didn't succeed in
No, no,
creating the
I'm
universe?
saying, are you asking me that or Monkey Boy?
No, I'm asking you that.
No, I was just saying that under Monkey Boy's account of power, it clashes with what he said earlier about the
But
in every world where God
no,
exists, the universe exists. Because if by power you just mean were I to take the route of enacting that, I would have good reason to think I would succeed. Then there could also be worlds where God is pretty sure if he wanted to create a universe, he would succeed, but he chooses not to anyway.
yeah, but even then, like, it's just not clear because then there's just the open question of how does God actually manifest the universe to being?
But look, the point is like before your problem was that it was in somewhat unintelligible what they meant by causation if it isn't a physical relation or a relation in time. And then I gave you the counterfactual account of causation, and I gave you a more enriched concept of explanation. It doesn't seem to have the same issues that it's unintelligible. You understand what these terms mean more or less, and you're able to give an account of the the causal relationship between God, which is outside of time, and the universe, which is in space and time.
I still think it's unintelligible, but I think there was like a
Which
level
part is
of
unintelligible? Like which
unintelligibility.
part are you not understanding?
Well, what it would mean, like in what way would God manifest the universe?
Manifest the universe, huh?
Yeah, to say that he has the power to do so just means if he desired to do so, that he would succeed with it with
No,
respect to his
if
aim.
you so you can think of in
Because
one
I'm not
account.
understanding this. Is it ex nihilo creation? And then I don't understand a concept like that, or
Might not
is it
be. I
not?
don't know why it would have to be ex
Well,
nihilo
that's what I'm
creation.
asking. Well, I'm not saying it has to be, right? I'm just
I
wondering.
think it's compatible with both. As long as you like so you understand what it means for God to have a choice in picking a world or no?
Um, well, if all you mean is that he can consider a range of worlds he can bring about, and he decides to bring a specific partitioner in the space that he has considered, in that way, I can understand just, you know, um, effectively like using which, like, rolling out which ones to do, to which he has like a specific world in mind. I'm not understanding what it would mean for him to actually bring about the world.
Wait,
Well,
why? Wait, why is it easy for you to understand? Are you just saying that you're imagining God like already in some like spatio-temporal thing, picking through universes to instantiate? Because it seems like when you're saying that you can conceptualize God picking a world, but you don't know how he would instantiate that world, why aren't you just saying you don't know how he would pick between worlds? Because that seems like it has the same problem that you were saying earlier.
No, I can understand that God conceives of a range of worlds he could bring about, and then he just makes a decision in the type of conception he has. What I'm not understanding is how he actually manifests the universe to being.
Yeah, but
when why would
choices.
you need to understand how that's played out for you to understand this concept?
Because
Yeah.
it sounds like magic, right? And I just understand concepts like magic are they're understood to be devices used to basically say that there's not a there's superficial explanations, right? They're kind of like dormitive virtues. We're just saying, well, the way God brings it about is with the dormitory ability he has to bring it about. Right. And under traditional causal semantics, where we say there's physical entities and we posit a causal mechanism, that's like some physical description of how these things play out. Right.
Traditional, I don't know traditional causal semantics. I don't know what you mean by that. You
He
mean
means he means human.
okay. Uh
Yeah. The non metaphysically inflated
so
one
I'm
that
still not seeing
both
the
have
problem.
the
The
common
problem
folk
is
view.
the problem for you is you don't fully understand it. There are parts of it where it's not comprehensible, but that just seems to me like completely unproblematic. Like there are parts of almost
Well,
every theory that no one
how
fully
is God
understands.
bringing? How is God bringing a world to being, not magic?
Depends what you mean by magic. Like
Yeah, that we're saying that.
Unexplained?
Yeah, there's no genuine account
genuine
of what it would mean to bring it about.
genuine account. I don't know what that it's supposed to say.
I think it just means
It,
explanation.
I mean, we given the explanation is not the problem. The problem is him conceptualizing exactly how the world manifests, and that's just I don't see why anyone would have to give you that. There are parts of like every single theory that may be
But if I don't
incomprehensible to
have,
some people. It's not problematic at all, though.
but if we just don't share like a concept at all of what that would mean,
No, we do share. We wait. No, we do share parts of what the concept is, as we said before.
no, I'm talking about the concept of him, the way in which he brings about the universe.
Oh, that's okay. I don't know why you would need to know that, though.
But then why would I think that's even a meaningful concept? Why would I not just think you're saying gibberish?
Which part is a meaningful concept?
The way
Because
in which he
you
brings
don't
it
need to
about.
know. You don't need to know every single part of a concept to have some understanding of what it is. I mean,
Well, how is it a genuine theory if it's not informing you how the entity actually explains the fact?
Wait, it is informing you how it is somewhat informing you of how it explains the fact. You just don't know how. Like, you can think
It's
of it.
like when
Another
people
example
raise like
is
objections to subjectivism and they go, "But how do you know that's bad?" It's like they're raising an epistemic concern there, but it's like the same thing. It's telling you it's like giving some account, but it's not giving you how.
That sounds more like an objection to realism.
Yeah, so I guess I don't see it. I think that not seeing how that's done and lacking that concept, right? And your inability to like even communicate the concept. I'm not even convinced you're nourished with the concept. I'm just I don't see why I wouldn't just think that
I never
concept is
claim to be exactly
then
nourished with
why
the concept. I'm
then
just
why
saying
would I
it's
think
irrelevant.
well why would I think a concept that I don't have reason to believe is meaningful is even possible?
What?
That doesn't make any sense. Yeah,
Wait,
you want to say it's possible that God brings about a world without a way as to how. It doesn't seem like that's
wait.
even why
Without
would
a,
I
I didn't say he brings it without a way as without a way. I'm just saying we
no,
might not know
I'm
the way.
saying then why then I don't even understand because look, I understand maybe under
I'm not claiming that you should understand or you do understand. I'm
I
just
know,
saying
but
it's irrelevant.
I'm saying in this but look, I'm saying that this is like getting into like a lot of like woo woo stuff, right? And using
Ooh.
these like yes, like metaphysically inflated entities, right? And
If
postulating
you
these
want to say
things,
strange,
they're
we're
not
not.
the same as like when I have like a physical theory and I don't exactly know the how, right? But it's in principle I can give like a physical description. In this case, I don't know how. I don't have a way. I don't even like I can't fathom how I would
Why
even
do you need to
offer
know
an
how?
explanation for the fact. And
Why
then
do you
at
need
that
to know
point,
how?
well,
What's
to think
bearing on
that,
you knowing how God creates the universe?
well, to know that it's meaningful.
Well, meaning. Okay, to know that it's okay. There's funny thing. Know that what is meaningful.
The concept of him manifesting the universe.
So what? Okay, but you do have some concept of him manifesting universe and what would be involved in that. It's that well, he's there, and somehow the universe arises because of him. Now, there's something more to
But
manifesting universe is the way he carried out that. That's what we don't know. But you do know in somewhat of what it means to manifest the universe. You just don't fully have the concept.
yes, I don't see why I wouldn't just think that's meaningless.
Okay, that's crazy. Like that's genuinely crazy. So like for
What part
example,
about it is crazy? Like
that's like saying,
imagine I said, well, the concept I have of normativity, when I do like deep analysis as to what I mean by these concepts, it just seems like it being internal is just a wedded property of normative properties. Such that when people talk about uh realism about norms or like normative properties. I just don't understand what that means. So when you say, well, they just have the property, right? And I'm asking, in what way do objects externally exhibit value properties, right? Under that construal where you don't have a deeper analysis, it just remains unclear as to why I would think that's even a meaningful concept.
well, look, there's two there's two things. The concept is not meaningless because you don't have a
I'm
full
not claiming
description
it's
as
meaningless. I just don't see why I would think it's
look,
meaningful.
like let me finish. Like the concept is not meaningless just because you don't have a full description of it. That's like saying that okay, maybe you know that God is um all powerful, all knowledgeable, but you don't know everything about God. You couldn't know everything about God because he's just too big for you to fully understand. That's not saying the concept of God is meaningless. Like almost a lot of our concepts, we have partial understanding of them, yet there's no way we call them meaningless because we don't have a full understanding of everything that's going on in the way everything works. That's not how concept construction works in general. You don't need to give every single part of the concept to give some idea of what you're talking about.
The
Now,
thing is,
like,
I don't have any concept of what you're talking
and
about.
again, that we showed that was false a couple seconds ago.
And what are you talking about? How is that false?
You said you don't. Okay, the proposition you're referring to, you don't have a concept of is how that God manifest the universe in some way. And we've already shown you know something about this concept. You know that God exists in some way because of his desires, motivations, etc. He brings about the universe. The thing you don't know about this manifestation is the way he brings about this universe. So you have some part of the concept, you just don't have the full concept.
I don't think there's any genuine concept there.
Look, you already agreed you had some part of the concept.
It just seems like you're saying with his powers, once he deliberates on doing something using its powers, he does it. And I understand the act of deliberating, but I don't understand in what way with his powers does he bring about the universe, right? So
I'm
it
not
seems
saying
like there's
I understand
I'm saying okay, but I'm saying it seems like there's no actual part I'm understanding that is other than just like the fact he's deliberating.
that. Well, you know two things. You know the fact that he's deliberating, he has certain desires, and he chooses a certain world he wants to bring about, and that world is in fact brought about. You don't know the way that world is brought about. And I'm claiming that's not necessary.
Yeah, but
It's just
well,
it's like completely dishonest
it's
that you have
not
no idea about the concept.
it's wait, hold on. It's not necessary with respect to what?
With respect to understanding the argument in a reasonable way.
Imagine, well, what do you think like people like dualists do, right? Like a dualist wants to say that, well, suppose that there's a physical system, right? And consciousness, or let's say the brain is material and consciousness is immaterial, right? And you want to say that the brain manifests configurations of material, manifests some immaterial that in some way supervenes over the material, right? They're sympathetic to positing different substances in light of the fact they don't understand what it would mean to say that material structures bring about these immaterial structures, right? And they want to
Usually
say they don't think those
those
concepts are
sort of
meaningful, so they eliminate them in opt for these alternative this alternative view. Right? This
usually
is like a
those
legitimate
moves
move in philosophy. I don't see how it's
usually those
dishonest.
moves are not like legitimate and like what usually those moves in philosophy are viewed as very not rigorous at all. Like usually they're very unsatisfying to people and people don't like them in general. Like people will give stronger motivations against dualism that don't just say, "Oh, I don't really understand what it is for this to call each other." Because at some point you're not really going to take those
Well,
explanations seriously.
well,
When you
that's
can
not
give
a
other
really a move. That's just a fact about not appreciating the concepts. It might be an illegitimate move to be to, you know, from the fact that you don't understand how, rather than strongly investigating because we already have priors that things are likely explained by um, material or like some physical description or something that
yeah, but that's not what I was direction I was headed towards. Direction I was headed toward is like they'll say more. They'll say things like, when we move around, our mind moves with us. That'd be very strange if there was an immaterial thing there. They give other motivations to say, hey, look, this immaterial thing interacting with this material thing. It's not plausible because XYZ. They don't really just say that, we don't really understand how this happens because that's not really required of you to have some idea of what's going on.
I'm just saying, well, sure, I think that the moves done by dualism are laughable, but in any case, what you could just do is kind of not actually posit like a dualist view. I'm saying the sentiment that the dualist does. Imagine I just say, well, I'm indifferent to whether dualism or physicalism is true. In light of the fact, well, physicalism, I don't understand how we explain immaterial like systems physically.
Wait, wait, just sum that up in one sentence.
I'm just saying the same move they do where they don't understand how you explain minds um, being some immaterial object physically. I don't see how you would do that in the case of God, and I just don't see why I would act as if that's something.
I don't. The first thing you don't get how they explain what immaterial minds are doing materially. I don't get the concern. Like, what's the point there?
Well, I understand for something to even be held in discourse that both people are appreciating what's being said.
Oh, well, no, not in
Unless
the
it
way you're.
were,
Those are like far past dialectical requirements. Like, people have discourse all the time, and they don't really need to get this specific on what the terms mean. Maybe they have some understanding of the terms. Giving definitions is rarely done, and it's usually very, very hard to do, and sometimes impossible to do. Like, the dialectical requirement you're giving is way, way higher than what's needed for ordinary discourse, of course.
well, is it impossible because it's primitive?
Uh, well, that's in the case it is impossible, it is primitive, yeah. Or you don't have the expressive resources in your language to speak about it yet.
Because that just creates an impasse.
I
But
have all the expressive resources in my language.
but like the impasse. I mean, I don't understand at all the point you were bringing up about what's happening in the case about
Look, I'm
people who
saying
believe in
you can
dualism.
imagine.
I think like the people who say they're not understanding what it means for immaterial substances to interact with material substances are just doing lazy philosophy, in my opinion. They're not.
I'm just saying the same way in in the natural world or in metaphysically deflated discourse when we say X causes Y, right? We we'll question that causal relationship and we would like offer a causal mechanism to tie that, right?
Not always.
Or else we
Like,
wouldn't close the gap between correlation.
well, we are like we did give a sort of mechanism. Uh, and to say we
What
didn't
was
give a
that
mechanism at
mechanism?
all would to be misunderstanding what we were saying, because the
What was
mechanism would be partially explained by God's wants, his desires, his deliberation about the world, him choosing the world. The thing we don't know about the explanation is the way he brought about the world. Now, when we're
but that
explaining how certain mechanisms happen in physics, we may, of course, leave out details of what happened or the way things happened. But like
that just sounds like there's no mechanism at all. That just seems like
I
the
gave you
antecedent.
parts of the mechanism. Like
That just seems
you're
like the antecedent
very
is the desire and
uncharitable.
the
I mean,
consequent is the. I don't know how I'm being. Look, I'm just understanding the antecedent to be
okay,
God
okay,
desires
what are the
or wills
mechanisms
to.
that I claimed are at play here?
I don't. I'm not seeing a mechanism, right? I'm
What?
seeing
No,
the.
I'm not asking whether you think they're valid mechanisms. I'm asking you what are the mechanisms I told you or I claimed were mechanisms.
You're saying God's intentions is one, and that's all I think I've heard.
His deliberation, his choice,
Yeah, the deliberation.
and the choice. The only thing that
But how's
is
that in
incomplete in the
the
explanation would be
deliberation is
the
just the
way
choice?
the choice unfolded.
Yeah, but that's exactly look, the antecedent is that God wills, right? And that's just gonna be like we're gonna understand him willing it as desiring, intending, and choosing to do so
And
and
okay, wait
delivering.
to get clear
And
what
then
you were
the
saying before.
consequence,
Wait to make it very clear what you were saying before. You don't believe these are valid um, ways of explaining what's going on here. Are
I'm
valid.
not seeing no, I'm not seeing how they're even explained.
You don't you don't see at all how God's wants, his desires, or his choice would do any explanatory work as to how the universe manifests in this world.
No, I can just imagine like it's just birth that when God desires to do it, it comes about.
That way,
Right? And it's not
that's
his
not.
intentions to bring explaining it.
I'm not asking if it's logically possible.
Yeah,
And
I'm saying that
I
what
can
you're
imagine
offering
worlds in which causal
underdetermines a world
explanations
like
fail all
that.
the time. Like, what's your point?
I'm saying that what you're offering is under determining an interpretation like that.
Do you think that causal relations are Our explanations are entailing in this way.
Yeah, I think explanations are entailing.
Wait, so okay, so really, so if let's say that the lightning strike caused this person to die, I couldn't ever make it the case in any logically possible world that this lightning strike didn't cause that person to die.
Was that a question?
Yeah, that's a question.
You're asking if I can make it logically possible
Yeah, but
that it doesn't
well, it's
kill
just
him.
the
Sorry,
fact that this person died by the lightning strike. You know,
I'm not. Wait, I'm not understanding what you're asking.
It's testing
like okay,
your entailing relation.
I didn't hear the example.
Yeah, I said okay, a person is struck by lightning and they die. Why can't I just make the same move and say okay, and there's another logically possible world where this is just a brute fact?
Yeah, you could.
Okay, then they're not entailing, and 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 certainly that's a weird way to think about causation, and that's then you're saying nothing meaningful actually about whether God is playing the relevant explanatory role. Because if you
Well,
could
no,
just argue about
you can you can offer reasons to why it's not just some brute correlation, right? And you can that's what
yeah,
the
and I
point of
did
a
that in the God
mechanism is to do.
great, and I did that in the God case.
I I mean, I guess I'm not seeing it.
Is anyone else would anyone else have a problem with me saying that God's desires, his wants, his choice plays some role in it in how the universe came to be if God existed? Does anyone else find it hard to
I mean, is
follow?
Davey or Don, do either of you think like what I'm doing is a bad move and thinking that I don't think it's meaningful concepts like him bringing about a world?
We can ask them if they get back. I mean,
Are they both
What are
gone?
you asking, you sophist?
You already heard the question.
I low key tuned out because I've been working.
Oh my God.
well, actually, the
Well,
first thing
look,
I
basically I'm saying something like I think like I'm almost like maybe you want to say a non-cognitivist about theism, or I'm not convinced theism is possible or something like that. But what I'm saying is that Julian thinks it's almost like an illegitimate move to question the possibility of theism in virtue of the fact I don't understand how God can manifest a world. Right.
Look, I don't. Um, I think the non-cognitive stuff is uh, kind of trash, honestly. I think the concept is obviously meaningful. I think it's just false. Um, if you're asking about, I mean, creation, like if you're just saying that creation ex nihilo, at least traditionally understood, is just gibberish to you. I mean, I guess what about that is gibberish is what I would ask first.
He's saying it's
But like, I
gibberish
could
because
grant it is
he's saying
gibberish,
it's
but
gibberish because of his views about causation.
wait. There's another question before this. They go on. I wanted to ask you guys: do you think Monkey Boy's right in saying that my explanation, I'm giving no real account of how God manifests the universe when I appeal to things like his desires, his wants, his choice? This seems to
Well,
give me some.
those are all the things that precede the manifestation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they play a role in producing the manifestation.
Yeah, they're the antecedent, they're not the mechanism.
And one, it gives you some understanding of
I
the
think
relation between God and the universe and the manifestation of the
It's
universe.
like you're saying it's like I'm asking how I pick up the sandwich and eat it, and then you say, "Well, you're
I would no,
hungry." You start
because that's not the
salivate.
problem.
Wait.
I never
Uh,
claim to give any account of how God creates the universe.
or
Then what do you
okay,
mean
like
by mechanism?
if I
That's
ask,
just what I mean
hold
by
on. If I ask, like, can you illuminate this for me? It's like, I don't understand it. I don't think it's coherent or intelligible how you eat the sandwich. And then you say, like, well, you want to eat the sandwich, you desire to, you start salivating, and then you decide to eat the sandwich.
Well, that's that. I never claim to give an account as to like the mechanism by which.
No, right. But I don't see how any of that is eliminating.
Wait, what?
Do you think that that's eliminating in that example?
Eliminating what?
You're making it as if you're like making it at least. You said that you're making it a bit clearer and that you're not giving a sufficient mechanism, but you're naming facts about the mechanism, right?
Well,
But you're as uninformed from the onset, like how that process actually goes down.
I never, but I didn't claim to give how that process actually goes down, and I
Well,
don't
that's
think you
just
need to
that's
understand that.
just a lie.
I think it's just
And you said
trivially
you give
true.
parts of the mechanism.
I don't know if anything on the argument bears on you understanding the
You,
mechanism.
you literally said I'm giving parts of the mechanism, not the full mechanism. Right? You're saying
But
that
we
you
have to
don't
understand
completely know the mechanism,
what
but
the mechanism
you
is
didn't offer
referring to.
anything.
The mechanism is referring to
The
God's
question of
manifestation of the universe. Now, there's different parts. There's how God creates the universe. There is why God creates the universe, his reasons for creating the universe. Those are all part of manifestation of the universe. I
well, look,
never claimed.
maybe let me ask Dawn this. I don't know if Dawn's available.
Yeah, just hurry up.
Yeah, like what I said to this thing about him manifesting and why I think it's meaningless is because it just seems like what one would typically describe as magic, right? And what one can also just say, well, the way God does it is with his dormitory powers, right? And that's just like a superficial explanation.
I mean, there's just so much like free stuff here. Is this like, are you guys talking about just like classical theism? Like, are you just talking about like the standard classical notion, or are you broadening the concept of God such that it accepts other forms of creation?
No, it's almost all forms of God. Like the main dispute was over like whether like causation outside of space time, this relationship was a plausible one, um, are intelligible. And all I wanted to say is like you don't have to have a full understanding of how it happens to have some under some meaning of the concept. I mean, that's like far too much of a dialectical requirement, and it's far too much for concepts in general. Like it's such a high degree of you're asking for it. It's almost nonsensical.
I mean, okay, so if the question is about specifically aspatial, atemporal creation, well, I mean, I think I'm going to agree with MonkeyBoy on that point. I think that concept is gibberish. But I mean,
By
presumably you can
gibberish,
give.
I mean.
I mean, I don't understand what's being said there.
So you don't wait. So you don't understand what by causation are you implying the same thing Monkey Boy is implying, or different
But
concepts of
I
causation?
take causation to be a spatiotemporal mechanism.
Okay, of course
Yeah.
it's not going to make sense then because, but we've already broadened the concept to like
Well,
the
I mean,
That's been the
counterfactual.
whole point.
right. I think the point is like when you have like these natural kinds of laws, you give explanations for antecedent and consequent effects. But if you're just saying that there's some kind of relationship between a non-natural, I don't even know what you want to say there, like some non-natural plane and a natural plane, I mean that does have to give an account for, right? I
Well,
think
wait.
that's like why we have physics. I mean, we give
I mean,
account for
this is
that in
also,
physics.
this seems like the same problem will arise in miracles, right?
The like, but keep in mind our concept of causation here is just a counterfactual one, and our concept of an explanation is a little bit stronger. It requires some talk about powers and their relations to what is produced.
Yeah, but I mean, the counterfactual stuff about causation, that's like the Lewisian stuff, right? Like as
No,
far as I'm aware, no. Who's the
no,
one that
no.
talks about
The
counterfactual?
counterfactual account of causation is probably like the most popular one, especially outside of philosophy
No, I'm not.
domains. Where
I'm not saying it's not popular. I'm saying originally.
no, it's like it's just that okay, if X wouldn't have occurred, Y wouldn't have resulted, then X causes Y.
Yeah, but presumably the counterfactuals there are explained by some difference in the system. Like you actually have to give an account of that. Otherwise, in what sense does it mean to say you've caused
That's not what
something?
he's. That's not what MonkeyBoy's asking an account for. Because you have that if God doesn't if God doesn't exist. If causal mechanisms here. Like of course, because we only observe things in the physical world usually. Of course, it's gonna involve physical features. What's the
Why would
point?
I think I have a concept of non-causal mechanism? At that point, I don't even know what it would mean for there to be a mechanism.
We've already laid out what exactly we're laying causation with, and there seems to be no problem at the level of causation, but the problem is at the level of explanation, which involves powers. And you don't understand how God's power to manifest the universe is coherent, or no, his actual manifestation of the universe is coherent because you don't understand the way the mechanism happened. I'm just claiming you don't need to know that.
But
That's
why is your notion of how you understand powers not connected to some causal mechanism, like physically speaking? Like you have a notion of that outside of physical causation?
yeah. Uh,
No, that just sounds like bullshit now.
I don't know
No, I
what's
mean I'm not going to say it's
bullshit
bullshit,
about
but
that.
just what's the account?
Account of what?
Powers that doesn't require you know these kinds of physical relationships.
Oh well, the power is to bring about, produce, enable, explain some effect. And there's nothing that's inherently temporal about this relation. Like the thing is, you'll layer your causal relations when they don't need to be with temporal language.
Look,
There's literally nothing you'll tell me about causation that requires it to be physical, unless you want to layer your concept with temporal stuff. But there's
I don't think that I don't have probably the temporal stuff in the same sense you do. I'm like an anti-realist about that. So, I mean, you can just talk to me in causal terms. I don't really care about the temporal stuff. But how
right.
is that
So
not related to physical mechanisms?
it is related to physical mechanisms insofar as physical mechanisms have powers.
No, presumably you have powers because of the physical mechanism.
You have powers because of the type of being you are. That's correct.
Yeah, a physical being.
I don't see why non-physical beings also wouldn't have powers via the type of beings they are.
Well, if by power you mean not the same kind of stuff that I'm talking about, that's fine. Just what's the kind of mechanism there that you're talking about?
Kind of mechanism to what?
Yeah, that explains how these other entities have powers in their own rights to cause or explain things.
How?
Right,
Okay.
because I mean, are you familiar with the kind of causal closure problems on idealist theories?
What specifically are you talking about? I don't know.
Yeah, so I think what's pretty standard in Bill of Mind is that um, things like dualists and these people want to say, okay, well, physicalists have a very poor time of explaining, how intentionality arises. These kinds of non-spatiotemporal properties come out of, um, these physical properties. Um, but the dualists want to say, okay, well, we have both of these, non-physical properties and physical properties, but the only reason, that they, actually act in a repeatable way is due to psychophysical harmony laws or something like that,
Oh, I
right?
that okay. That's what you Leibniz's favorite. Yeah.
Okay, well,
So, yeah.
I know you're a
I
Leibniz
didn't know that
guy.
was called the closure. I never heard that called the closure problem. But
Well, that's not I mean, that's not the issue there. The issue there is that well, the dualists give an account of why these kinds of psychophysical harmony laws exist, what they do, and how they're relevant. And then what the physicalists have to do is say, okay, well, look, we can talk about the mind in a reductive way or an eliminativist way, and then we solve the problem. Now, what's the move going to be for the idealists who take the same account, right? Presumably, they want to give some account of these kinds of physio-psycho harmony laws, but then they're going to have to give an account for you know um, how these mental objects are causing physical objects to exist, persist, and act in a certain way that the type A reductive physicalists have given. right? They've given that. And whether it's false or not doesn't really matter. The point is that they've given a mechanism. They say, well, okay, these symbols have dispositional properties, and once composition, they gain new powers. And you can give.
That's not telling you the mechanism in the way that MonkeyBoy wants it. MonkeyBoy wants you to say something stronger. Like he doesn't want to say, okay, well they have the dispositions or the, he wants. How is that produced? Don't just tell me they have dispositions or they compose themselves in a certain way and that brings about the effect. How is that effect produced? There's something deeper MonkeyBoy wants than just that, because I can say the same thing. I can appeal to God's desires, his choice, him choosing the world. But MonkeyBoy wouldn't accept that. He would want how exactly that choice brings about the effect. And that's something I'm unable to give him. And that's also something the people you're talking about are unable to give. The reductive physicalists.
They're
Yeah,
unable
I'm
to give.
asking for the
They're
concept of
they're unable to
mechanism.
quote unquote bridge the gap between the kinds of properties, right? That's the issue, though. But if you're a reductivist, there is no gap between properties because they're all the same thing, right? It's
Yeah, I
very
agree.
obvious how physical things affect physical things.
Yeah, I agree. But the point being is like they're not doing what MonkeyBoy requested them to do. Do
Oh,
you
okay.
agree with
So,
that?
Monkey Boy, what are you asking then?
I'm asking, in what way is it that what would it mean for him to be bringing it about, right? And he wants to say that he has the intentions and then it comes about. And I'm asking, like, what
No,
is the
that's
actual
not exactly
connection?
right. He has the intentions, the desires. He chooses the world. He thinks about the world to choose, and those
Yeah,
things together
he does all,
the
yeah,
effect.
so the antecedent is just like he has all the deliberative conditions, and then
And then he
the
chooses.
consequent is, yeah, and then the consequent just is that it's brought about. And I don't really understand what process really is going on there.
Yeah, and note in the same way, the people Don you're talking about, they're saying, okay, well, composition occurs. They have dispositions, but they don't tell you the way that brings about the effect. I mean,
But it just seems to me there is no concept of even. There's not even the concept I have there of mechanism. So I only understand mechanism. I don't really see how those two things could be connected in any meaningful way.
I don't know what you're saying there, Monkey Boy.
Well, I'm not understanding what it would mean there for him to bring it about.
I mean, you can't just like. I don't know.
When I
I
like bring about an act, right? Says there's something I do, my antecedent would be like my desires and whatever. And then the mechanism is like some physical description of facts about my body and what I do with it to produce the effect, right? But there, it's just I don't understand what that would mean.
I mean, are you asking for something like, the reason electrons, bind with protons or something has to do with electrical dispositions and the number of valences in their rings or stuff like that? Like electrons in, the rings of certain compounds, and that's why they bind together. Is that what you're asking for?
Um, I'm not sure. I guess I'm just not seeing how it would be that uh, an entity
Well,
like that with the
look,
deliberations.
if you're not sure what you're asking for there, how do you expect them to answer the question?
Well, I understand what I'm asking, but I guess I'm not able to like articulate it well. I'm saying something just to the extent that I don't understand like the connection there.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking. Like, are you asking for something like, chemical composition, like sodium binds with chlorine due to the amount of electrons in the rings, and that the electrons have um, certain electrical dispositions that cause them to bind together? Like, is that set of facts what you're looking for? But
Yeah.
on the
Something like that.
the non-naturalist sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess something like that.
Like God deliberates about making the universe, and then he puts all the ingredients in a bowl and mixes it together, and then bang the universe.
No, even that wouldn't suffice because he wants to know exactly how those ingredients mix together, what
Well,
Is that true? Would
sort
that
of.
suffice,
I'm not.
MonkeyBoy, or no?
I'm not. I'm not sure if I need all of that.
No, no, I mean like monkey, but like be honest, like the sort of burden you're putting on these people is actually a very, very high one. It's not just
On who people? Like this
Wait,
isn't
well,
something I did.
look, if Monkey Boy's asking for the stuff that I just talked about, I don't think that's too much of a burden to ask for, because we have a similar answer in the other direction, like for physical objects, right? But the point is like, can you at least give a simple? You don't have to get as
no,
complex as physics is now, but
even
can you give
even then,
a comparable account?
even then that'd be a very high burden to ask. I mean, you asked 1,000 years ago, you're saying they had no account of how physical things cause other physical things if they don't know about the relations between the electrons and what that's not how we go about reasoning about physical objects in general. It's a very high burden. And look, the ordinary things people may appeal to when talking about physical causation would be like someone's what they desire to do, the circumstance they're in, the choices they have. The same sort of things we're able to appeal to in the case of God. I mean,
Well, are you? I mean, Julian, are you a physicalist?
no.
Like, as in, like
Julian is a
you don't understand.
non-naturalist moral. Julian is a
Well, hold on.
non-naturalist moral realist.
I know,
I
but like, are
believe
you
in
saying
moral
something like,
properties,
no, no, that's not what I mean.
all
I
the
mean, like about
properties.
the mind.
I'm
Well, about
not
the mind.
decided on that. I'm not totally against there being like a soul or something.
No, okay.
It's like, but I'm an animalist, but like the soul would have to be in like another possible world. It can't be in this one. Like,
You want it? No, I don't. Like the reason I'm sorry, I'm at work. The reason I'm asking is because I mean, it seems like that kind of.
We want to hear
Sorry,
my voice so bad.
you're done. It seems like when people use that kind of language, um, you know, they have the desires and yada yada yada. I mean, it seems like what the physicalist can do is just paraphrase that kind of language away, and just list a bunch of physical facts like about how the brain works functionally and yada yada yada. But I mean, I think that same like the non-naturalist who believes in God isn't going to have that same kind of option available to them if they think God is like a special. Well, I mean, I think it's just about God in general. I don't.
Yep. I mean, what what they're doing when they're reducing the choices and the things down to physical facts is just sort of speculation. I mean, they um they have some theory about how the brain works and how the body works, and they want to say these things are reducible because of certain philosophical commitments, but they aren't giving like I mean, it's sort of guessing in a way that I'm not saying like they have motivations and stuff, but nothing that there's nothing that reducing them down to physical things is really doing for the explanation.
I
Uh,
actually think it's doing a lot there. Like, I mean, and can't you even just conditionalize it? Like, if physicalism is true, then those kinds of things are paraphrasing, right? Like desires, language about desires, intentions. Those things are just about how electrons move in certain ways.
I
That's what
because
it ends
look,
up
I
being.
don't like imagine. Okay, imagine this is like Greece in the 10, 12 BC, and we're in like a case about the court hearing, and we want to find out whether we should end the life of Protagoras or something. And Protagoras, he killed another man, and we want to find out like why did he kill another man? Well, we can say that that man did bad things against him. He had a desire to hurt that man because of those bad things. I mean, these explanations that we're giving for why Protagoras would kill the other man, they seem to fare no better if we reduce them down or not. There's like nothing in the conceptual analysis that changes our assessment of the case once we reduce these sort of facts about Protagoras down.
But that's not
So
what he's asking for. He's just saying that, look, it could be the case that appealing to the desire language is going to solve, why he's guilty in that case. I agree with you there. But the point is that the physicalist language thinks that stuff is just reducible to, some physical mechanism, right? Whether we use the language that way or not doesn't really matter. But
Look,
I'm not trying to disagree with you here. I think MonkeyBoy's wrong here. I think that
even right, I
the
think,
view is not intelligible for that reason. I think it's
but
oh my
if you're
God,
thinking about
perfectly meaningful.
the choice in that way or the desires in that way, then you're not thinking about them in the right way that I'm trying to convey with this argument. And
Oh,
in
Danny's
fact,
live.
like, it's completely conceivable, at least logically possible, that you can have these sort of choices and they're not reducible down to physical things. That's a logical possibility out there. You can even picture it in your head if you wanted to. Maybe we're like non-physical beings, robots or something. Now you understand what choices are in this regard. It's no less clear to understand choices about God's actions, choices and
Yeah,
so on.
but maybe the language choice, maybe it's like choice in an analogous sense, but not in the strict sense that maybe MonkeyBoy was using it before.
Yeah, I
And
don't think that matters. I think once we've like kind of armored our concept this way, then like surely the argument's at least intelligible.
yeah, I think look, that's what I'm saying. I think it is intelligible. I think it's perfectly meaningful. I don't understand what MonkeyBoy's saying there, but I think he might be justified in just saying that that's a non-starter for him then. If he has these like metaphysical background commitments about how desires work and you just completely destroy that with your own understanding, then
Sure, but it's not like
that's
the
fine for
metaphysical
him to reject.
commitments. Yeah, okay, I agree with that, but it's not like the metaphysical commitments he's holding. They're way too strong. I mean, they're like any theist probably has a very good response to those sort of commitments.
Yeah, I mean that's for you two to talk about. I don't really care for that.
Yeah, I mean, I know you don't care about intellectual engagements in philosophy, Don. That's why you're here.
I will fuck you.
Are you guys still having the same conversation?
Well, we've had a conversation for a long time about the same thing.
Okay.
I just proved God's existence, and MonkeyBoy conceded that God exists.
Yeah.
Actually, Kason, we were about to bully
Mm.
MonkeyBoy because he said he's a non-cognitivist about theism.
I
Well,
heard
I
that
said
earlier.
something like that. Where I'm not sure it's saying anything meaningful.
I mean,
Given
this
I don't even understand the concepts there to levy the statement.
well, MonkeyBoy, can I be honest? This response is kind of like worse than the responses Reddit atheists give because I mean,
It
like at
really
least the
isn't.
Reddit atheists, even if they're philosophically incoherent, I at least agree somewhat with what they're saying.
No,
So, as
it really isn't.
with your response, I don't agree with almost any of it.
No, now you're just lying. He literally is. He's just lying at this point.
I think like we have to get people off like this like cringe physicalist sort of way of viewing the world. It's wrong. They don't have an explanation for mathematics. They don't have an explanation for modal properties. They don't have an explanation for objective morality.
Okay, I'm gonna watch Danny, and Julian just seems to be crashing out. So
I mean, look, I'm just gonna become like one of those theists because I really think like these
okay,
like
you probably crashed out. I gotta go.
well, W Julian.
What happened? You made him rage?
Yeah, he realized he had no grounding for morals, for modal properties, for math, so he left.
I just want to say that one of you guys were obviously wrong there, and anybody who can't tell who it was is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, MonkeyBoy needs to go back to the
I
back
thought it
to.
was Julian that was wrong there.
I guess we'll never
I've
know.
always